Patience. We had a delightful weekend, but before we get into that, it's Into the Obscure with myself, Jenny, Tressa,
Hello, thank you.
and Kara.
Hello.
Guys, we had a really good weekend.
We had the best weekend.
The best.
The absolute best. We were at the Great Lakes Paranormal Conference, which was amazing. 3 days. 2 nights and 3 days of incredible people. We saw old friends. We met new friends. Well, Tressa and I met new friends.
Yeah.
Kara already knows everybody.
I met some new friends, or at least got to meet them in actual person.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
I did know who they all were.
Old friends you met IRL this time. It's fine.
Yes.
I managed to control my face most of the time,
Not me.
but my arms were a totally different scenario. They
I
were
disagree.
all over the place.
You were
should probably
folding
check
your
our
arms.
TikTok.
All of our TikTok. All of it.
Or
You're
not,
gonna wanna see
whatever.
some arms.
Yep. Into the Obscure
That's
podcast on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Kara had a ridiculous amount of photos on her own Facebook. Tressa had some on hers.
There are so many
That I
more
stole
to
from
come.
Kara.
Oh, there's so many.
Oh
yes.
my god.
Wait for far more TikToks and Reels. This is just what I did today already.
Yeah. Well, I noticed because there are some I don't remember being in a lot of photos, right? Like the brain sort of kicks that information out.
Uh-huh.
But there are some very specific ones that I remember, and usually it's because of some sort of bit that I'm doing. So I remember the bit, and then I remember, oh, there was a photo of that.
Right.
So I know that there's more photos because I remember the bits.
I noticed going through the actual conference's page that you're in a lot of, well, your ass is in a lot of the pictures talking to vendors. So bonus for you. Getting that ass out
My
there.
butt's all over the place. And then apparently a picture of my boob.
Well, I mean, that was me
Yeah.
at the bar.
Which is probably the best case scenario for a picture of my boob because
Yes.
that means
It
it was
depends.
relatable to the
I
to
mean,
the context.
I looked up and then I was like, this is perfect.
Let me
I
get
wasn't
closer.
expect to see the picture.
Hey, Jenny, don't be weird. I'm going to put my phone right next to your boob.
And to get the context of this photo, you will have to go and follow at least one of us or the podcast page because that's the only place that you will be able to figure out what we're talking about.
And that the only place we're going to talk about it, that's the teaser.
Yep.
Jenny Davis is in the chat saying hello and how great it was to
Hi,
see
Jenny.
us.
So great to see you.
You guys, her photos
Ah,
ridiculous.
so good.
Out there in the world of people listening to our sweet, sweet dulcet tones, go out and look at Jenny Davis's photos because they're so pretty. They're
Yeah.
so pretty. Really, really enjoyed them.
And I
I'm
totally
really-
appreciated because we saw so little of the asylum, I feel like, and just in the dark. And so she definitely shared a whole lot more of it with us.
Yeah, there's like this really cool warmth to them too. For like
Yeah.
a haunted, sort of abandoned place, you would expect it to be a little like the photos to just kind of feel colder, but they felt warm and welcoming. I really top notch.
Top notch.
What else? What else, guys?
Oh, yeah, you did. She got a private tour Saturday, so she had some extra time.
Well, good. I'm
You're
glad
off.
she did because she got the photos.
She also had the aura photography,
Oh,
which
that's right.
I am
Yes.
kicking myself for not doing. I'm so mad at myself for not doing. But Kara got it.
I did. So it's super cool. It's a whole 16 pages of report.
Holy
So
cow.
I'll read that one day. But at the top of it, there's like the aura photography and what every color means. And it's even like the chakras. And I would say for me, it was totally right on. Basic summary. I'm doing a lot of stuff and I'm all over the place all the time.
That checks out.
And energy is like up here. And
Yeah.
but maybe like it's all just kind of like brrr, is kind of what I got from it. So I was like, yes, don't disagree. So
You have
then,
an organized chaos about you that is
It's-
all encompassing.
yeah, like I hit all the points, but like it gets chaotic. So I then later I was like, oh, that's right. I wanted to like get a reading so I was like, Jenny, you're around all of these people all the time. You know who's good, who's, totally trust you with this. And she, so having just done, you know, the chakra and aura photography, all that, she goes, you're going to go to this Reiki healing. You need healing and not just a reading. And I was like,
Fine.
sure. And then, so we did not tell him anything about the reading, probably, like, you know, as we chuckled about it, like, he probably could have picked it up. But he definitely made his own assessment, basically saying exactly what the whole chakra reading said. So, I will say, so it was my first time, you know, getting it done, and I'm going to be honest, I was like, okay, I'm going to lay down on this thing for a little while, and at least it's like a nap, and no, I will say, like, that whole time, normally I, you know, talk about energy up here and everything all over the place. Normally I don't go like 5 seconds without thinking of like 50 other things that I have to do, and, you know, and I'll get to all of them. It's fine. And like running through the list all the time. But like during that time, I did not do that. Like at one point I was like, I haven't thought about anything in a while. And that was like not on purpose, not my effort. Like, and that was cool, and definitely like felt, you know, things felt different. And I'm not gonna like, I just feel a lot like more just like, oh, okay, now I'll just do this. This is fine, you know, and it's not like that anxiety before. So I give some credit. Like, I don't know.
I guess
Might
we should have
be
done
a
that
thing.
too.
Yeah,
Like,
from my angle, I snuck up and saw you because I was like, all right, like Kara, like laying down and sitting still for like a second is something I gotta see.
Right?
Yeah, so I snuck up there and she was just so, I've known you, what, 5 or 6 years now? I've never seen you that still.
I didn't
ever.
even care where my phone was right then.
What?
For that
There
long.
was no
I
phone.
mean,
That was it. There was no phone
it
in the
was
hands.
like away from me, and I didn't care.
Did you have a
Like,
different camera in your hands? Because
Like,
that doesn't
I
make
know.
sense.
I know.
What?
Jenny Davis did take a picture and send it to me. So
Okay,
I mean, like,
okay.
there's proof that this
You
happened.
had a photographer. That's all
But
that
I
matters.
didn't like know at the time. But
She
like,
didn't
it
prearrange.
was covered. Little did I know, you know, the universe took care of it. So, no, it was, I like totally, I will go to this man, like anytime he's at a con that's around, and I probably should have like made some effort, and Jenny knows him. So I think that's why I didn't make too much effort to be like, maybe I'll follow this man around a little bit.
Meanwhile, I went in the general direction of Diet like probably 5 times. And peeked around the corner because I want to get a reading done like so badly, but I'm also extraordinarily terrified for no apparent reason.
No, same. But
Yeah.
maybe just being close to her will like exude
Right.
something.
So I was like, if I could just get like, if I walk by her table a few times, like maybe in like 6 months, I might have the actual nerve to get
Or
it done.
maybe you'll just slough off all this energy and she'll be like, hey, I need to tell you something real quick. And it'll just keep happening. And then you'll get a full story after about 5 years. And it'll be great.
That'll be perfect because that's about as much information as I can absorb
Yes.
and about myself at
Yeah.
any one time.
Yeah.
So many good conversations though. I was lost in everybody's theories about entities and energies and good ways to investigate ghosts and all sorts of things, and then all of the stories about folklore and whatnot, which we all know that I love. Squee.
It was
So,
amazing. Like so many amazing conversations with so many different people about so many different things. And then you get to hear people speak specifically about the thing that they love. And it was just holy.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't need to sit until I'm listening to someone speak. That's fine.
No,
Yeah,
I
totally fine.
loved, I think like maybe a lot of people on their first time going for like a long time to one of these things, like away from, I was like totally freaked out that this was going to feel like a long, long time. And oh my God, a lot going on. And then I worked today and tomorrow, and I was like, oh no, I'm very concerned. And no, like I cannot wait for the next one. I'm like super energized. It was the most fun ever. Like I'm not even gonna say pleasantly surprised. I'm like shocked that I like it was that much fun and that awesome.
Yeah.
And was not weird or long. A little bit Saturday afternoon, a little bit, we sat there and ate our falafel sandwiches. I did. That's what I did because it was a little like could have slept longer. But that was not the conference's fault. That was my fault entirely.
Yes. No, I mean for all of us, really. It
Yes.
wasn't. It had nothing to do with the conference. It was everything to do with my lack of ability to get a proper amount of sleep. And thinking that I'm much, much younger. But
Well, Melissa needs to get picnic tables next year or something. But
Yes, we will.
absolutely.
I'll be sending her my suggestions because
Yeah,
she
those will
said
be the
send me your
notes.
suggestions. So watch
Picnic
out,
tables.
Melissa. One
because
of my
we
favorite
need to
new
sit
people.
down more
Yeah,
often.
I like to sit when I eat.
Isn't she great?
She's so great. Everybody
She's
was
so nice.
amazing.
Everybody
Love
was
her.
amazing.
Ah.
I know, so nice. And it's such not my element. I can go and I can talk to all kinds of people and ask strange questions and all of those things, but for some reason this felt very out of my element. And everyone was so incredibly welcoming, and it was nice because that meant that I didn't need to hang on to Kara's sleeve or Tressa's sleeve. I was able to go and chit chat with people.
I mean, I did do that to both of you.
Well, I
but
did that too,
so-
but that was because I enjoyed being around you. That was
Yeah,
the other thing
that's
about
what
it.
I'll say.
It was just.
Yeah, that was. Mhm.
It's not because I'm weird and awkward.
Yeah, no, just because we enjoy each other
Yeah.
so much. Which is the other thing, because the three of us spent an entire weekend together, and
We still love each other
We
very
do
much.
like more.
I can't wait. I can't
So let
wait
me
till
tell you
next
all, I
time.
literally Saturday morning texted my husband like, "Oh, that was fun." Like, no, good morning. We still all like each other. And last night, this is who we went out with or whatever, and he was like, "Wow, awesome," and and I would just very genuinely, and then even at the end, like, "Oh no, like." We're actually spending this whole weekend together coming up, you guys. I'm like,
You don't
It was the
understand.
best.
It was every minute of this weekend, and we don't hate each
every
other.
minute.
You don't understand. That's big.
Like,
It's huge.
Thank you.
I hope everybody realizes, even though we're talking once a week, like this was a little scary, but it was the best. So
Yeah.
we're so thrilled. And then all the new people that we can't wait to see everywhere else. I'm so sad that we're not going on October 7th to the Rock Island Paracon.
I
Like
know.
so sad about that. Like, of
know.
course I'm like looking and seeing like other stuff going on, and I haven't quite found a match yet, but
So
We
in
will
other
not
words,
be-
any of our new friends or people who are just listening, just invite us someplace. And
just
we'll-
advice. And
we'll
if we
show
Yes.
can come, like if it's realistic, we'll
We'll
do
be
our
there.
darndest.
We'll
do-
man
we
your
do enjoy
booth
it.
for a little bit.
Yeah, like it's fine.
Mhm. We'll bring you some snacks.
Yeah, we love
I-
snacks.
Oh, we love snacks.
Y'all, I brought so many snacks because I didn't know what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if I didn't bring snacks, we would have just stayed in that Airbnb the whole time starving. Walking to the
She
gas
brought
station
so many
across the corner.
snacks.
I had apples and carrots. And Jenny Davis, that's the one that I don't know. that's
DeKalb?
the variable. Yes.
Yeah, DeKalb seems real close.
It does.
It just
I
feels
mean,
very
you guys
close.
could go up. Like, I will probably be working.
We might just come get you from work.
We should be.
They'll notice.
Ah, will
Will
they?
they?
Just drop me off afterwards. It's cool.
I'm bringing a mannequin with like a nurse's hat.
With the nurse's hat.
And I'll just put a phone in her hands and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. On
Make it an
wheels, so she can
animatronic
move.
that's like occasionally.
We do have robots at work.
We
See?
do need animatronics. We need them.
We should mention also Sierra's all up in our chat. Sierra, it was amazing to meet you as well.
Yes.
Isn't she the cutest?
Yes.
Literally the
Adorable.
cutest.
Oh, and there's Mike from WAP. Come on.
Ah,
I
What
know.
are you guys doing?
I hope you all caught all of our shirts and, some good
Yeah.
TikToks.
I'm just going to
about
keep
the
making that
shirts.
noise every time anybody... Ah! It's going to be some good times. This is going to be a good time tonight, you guys.
Are you ready for our guest? Because she just popped in.
Oh, she popped in. I was
Oh,
yes.
absolutely. I got my book.
Very much so.
You've been
Okay.
reading all the books. I've been listening to all our guest spots. Jenny, you want to introduce? Or should I bring her on first? We should have talked about this.
So So how about as you bring her on, I'll talk
Uh-huh.
about how I got to sort of meet her, and little did we know that Jenny had known about her long before. I was on her friend Dave Scott's show, and we were talking, and he was like, "Have you ever met Varla Ventura?" I was like, "No, no." Hello.
Hello.
And he was like, "You have to message her right now. Tell her I said that, that we're friends and she needs to come on your show." And I was like, "Okay, Dave Scott, I will do that." And so I did. And here we are. So, Varla, hello. I'm going to
Hello.
introduce because I'm notoriously bad. I'm Kara.
I'm Tressa.
And I'm Jenny.
See, I
Hi.
didn't even have to do it.
I'm Varla.
Hi.
Hi.
Awesome to meet you. I'm so excited to have you on. For everybody that, of course, we're going to introduce, Varla is a writer, a traveler, and lover of the strange, straight from her website. She is the author of so many cool books that I am just like devastated that it will take me 2 years to be able to go read them. Because I'm notoriously busy and I'm the worst. But no, Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings, a complete guide to the wild and wicked enchanted realm is honestly what I'm most excited about. It's not the newest book, but that's the one I'm obsessed with, like fairies and all of that. But the newest, Varla Ventura's Paranormal Parlor, Ghosts, Seances, and Tales of True Hauntings. But Jenny has a little bit more interesting history here. I find it interesting.
Yes. So, I worked at Barnes & Noble for well over a decade, really like bookseller for life. So I picked up the Book of the Bizarre forever ago. I think it had just come out, so it was like 2009, 2010. I
It
think
might have even been 2008. I cannot
it's a good
remember
possibility.
the date, the publication date.
It's a good I would check the copyright page, but I'm much too interested in staring at you and the wall behind you.
And I don't even
By the
remember
way.
because it was that long ago. I can tell you the
know.
Beyond Bizarre came out in 2010, so I think it was
Okay.
2008 or
Yeah,
2009.
It must have been.
It
It
was
must
like one
because
right after.
anytime anything
that's awesome.
unusual or up my alley came across the shelves at Barnes and Noble, I grabbed it because so rarely did something strike my fancy. But
especially back then.
right?
Especially back then. Yeah.
There was not the paranormal section as it is.
No, the
today.
magic section was like
This
about
big.
maybe 7 books wide, and it was
Yep.
like Raymond Buckland and like a tarot book, and that was about it.
Yeah, that was about it. Now it's a little. Now it occupies about this much space on
Yeah,
the shelf.
more like half a shelf. Yeah,
We're getting there. We're growing. But yeah, and I love the way that the book is laid out because it's organized and there are these little snippets of just insane facts that I've never heard, like small things. And of course, I'm a huge fan of mythology and folklore and any of the magic in the world. So the Fairies book, I'm all over. Started that love with Brian Froud.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, oh my God, yeah, Brian and Wendy Froud, two of my faves. So I'm just enchanted, and now I'm looking behind you at your room, and I'm seeing. Am I seeing
My
some
midnight magic room. Yeah.
Am I seeing some antique picture frames?
Yeah, so let's see if I can tilt this. I always get made fun of, but you will probably appreciate this. So I always have like this is my like main that's my gallery wall. And I love empty picture frames, especially when you have like a really dramatic wall color like this midnight blue that I have. So I probably should set myself up so that's center behind me.
No,
I don't know why. I just have this like little cozy couch right here. And
Like it's also perfect like that. It's all perfect.
Yeah.
It really is. And let me tell you, if I were in my other room right now, it would be you would see all of my antique frames and
Picture
all
frames.
of my frames with empty spaces. So
Yeah.
I love
Oh,
you right
good.
now.
Yeah,
Immediately.
you are like
All of
my
the things.
demographic here. I
Yeah.
love you guys. This is great.
Nail it. This is perfect.
Before,
it's-
I was
Oh, yeah,
looking
go.
at. I'm sorry. I've been doing my research, whatever. But I was like, I bet her house looks amazing. So I'm glad that
Sure
checks out.
does.
Well, this is the room that, so I lived most of my life in San Francisco, and I always lived in these like really elaborate kind of funky Victorians.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to Minnesota and actually bought a house. So that was exciting.
Yeah.
And this kind of cool town, just like basically in St. Paul. But the house I bought, if you grew up on the West Coast, you didn't experience a lot of split levels. But if you've grown up in the Midwest at all, you know how big the split level is. So I don't even know if I'd ever been in a split level before I came here and I started looking at houses. So the house itself has a very like more modern aesthetic. And so all of a sudden, all of my like, old bottles and antique, like, Victorian picture frames and that stuff it just started looking like it didn't quite, I was trying to figure out how to work it in, but I knew that I needed a room that was just like completely right. It's the Virginia Woolf thing, a room of one's own.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I picked the darkest room in the bottom of the house and I painted it the darkest color. I mean, it's not black, but it's really dark blue. And every time I walk in here, I just feel so serene. I never think this room is dark and I can't see anything. I always just feel really, when you create for a living, even if sometimes that's a little bit more mundane creation, you still need to have an inspired space. And so I just needed to and I also, I don't even have all my books in here, but I needed a space to like pile the books that I'm working, if I'm working on a particular book and I have this stack of, I try and use books as sources more than anything.
Yes.
Sometimes I will go and find like old books on like Gutenberg. That's like that's a wonderful resource if you're not familiar with it. Gutenberg.org it's an online archive of like every book in the public domain. And you can type in words and find, it's like old stuff and it's all kind of been scanned. And so it's not like when you get a book, you'll usually get like a scholar's forward or some kind of interpretation of like what the heck this book is actually about. But it's still a great resource, especially if there are some really, obscure books, especially like mythology and folklore that you want to be able to like read, but you can't get your hands on them. So the greatest thing is when you have been like looking at a book and then you actually, this happened to me with one of my favorite sort of older ghost authors is Elliot O'Donnell. And I had read one of his books, one of his collections where he was talking about werewolves. And I read that online through Gutenberg. And then I was in this antiquarian bookstore, about 10 miles from my house. And I got his book of ghosts. And I was just like, and it wasn't even that much. It was like $7 or something. I was like,
my God, that's amazing.
This is like,
Don't tell them.
No, do not. No.
And they had this teeny tiny little section of like horror and, kind of like, they didn't really have paranormal, but they had old collections of ghost stories. But he's an excellent writer, and actually his ghost stories aren't really they're not really fictional. He is an Irish writer, wrote around the turn of the 20th century, and he actually had a lot of paranormal experiences himself as a child. So unlike a lot of the writers at the time that were collecting folklore and collecting, fairy tales and things like that, he kind of had a believer point of view more so than like some of the other good old boys of the time, that were even Yeats. Like Yeats had an understanding of Irish mythology, of course, but he was also raised by like a reverend, so he had his own kind of skew on things. Anyway, so there we are. We just dove right into the ghosts. Let's go.
I'm 1,000% writing all of these things down. Also, now if you could be my best friend, that would be great.
Pretty much.
We can
Be
go
best friends forever.
Yeah,
where do you live?
We can go to all
Her
kinds of
address
antique.
is.
Yeah. All kinds of
Hey, I
antique
need a date to Nick
bookstores.
Cave in a couple weeks. So
I'm in. Let's go.
Stop it.
We'll talk about all sorts of stuff and frames and.
Yeah,
busts.
When Dave introduced us, Carol, when Dave introduced us, the funny thing is I don't know if you've ever seen like my official author photo, which is like 5 years old, and I don't like posing for photos. but I totally have like a blonde pixie cut.
I know.
And so somebody else, I think it might have been Merle, was like, "You guys are like doppelgangers." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I better look, you know." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so flattered. This is great. Okay, all right."
Well, thank you. No, I'm just enchanted. I could just watch you and Jenny talk about books and stuff forever. So I'm going to ask though, because every one of your books, like everything, like I do just want to like dive into all of them because they're all so cool. What do you have a favorite? Like you write about fairies, you write about ghosts, you write about everything.
I have a couple favorite sections, but overall, my favorite book is actually the Paranormal Parlor book, which so I think I evolved a lot as a writer, between the Book of the Bazaar and my most recent one, which is Paranormal Parlor. And so I think that one of the things that happened is as I got a little more comfortable with just like putting myself out there, I sort of opened up more. And so there were more of my own stories rather than just collecting other people's stories. And by the time I got to Paranormal Parlor, it just like kind of all started coming out, you know?
Nice.
So, I like that book because it's ironically, that is the book that I wanted to write when I proposed the Book of the Bazaar.
Oh.
I wanted to write a book all about like ghost stories and haunted America. And at the time, there were only a few books that were really kind of like taking the nation by storm. And like Jeff Ballinger was one of them, you know, so and he was having a lot of success with his, I think it was, I cannot remember the name of it, but it was like the Encyclopedia of Haunted Places. It might've been, and it was all in that era, you know, it was like, and those were the few books that would make it into Barnes and Noble, right? Like that was the big deal.
Yeah.
If you could get into Barnes and Noble, if you could get into a brick and mortar store, that was everything. So, so the Book of the Bazaar sort of evolved into this like other thing. And there are some, like if you were to read that and then read the Paranormal Parlor, you would kind of see where there's like other people's stories that I've interviewed. But what was cool about the Paranormal Parlor book is I always, for whatever reason, even though I've immersed myself in like the paranormal world, whatever, I think I like set out to write that book and I just thought I'm just going to like come up with all these chapters and it's going to be other people's stories. It's just going to be this book of ghosts, right? And as I started writing it, every chapter I would write an intro. Like I had kind of worked it out how I thought the book was going to be, which is always a joke if you've ever tried to write a book or anything. It never quite, it kind of has a mind of its own. But I kept finding that when I would dive into write like the introduction to, you know, the section about child ghosts or the section about haunted hotels or whatever, I had my own experiences. And so that was just really kind of, it was odd because you would think, yeah, of course. I mean, I've been like, you know, writing about this and interviewed about this and interviewed other people about these topics for years. But I kind of always thought, well, I don't know, have I really had it? And then I started realizing, wow, I've had like continuous paranormal experiences since I was like 3 years old. And it's like I knew that, but I didn't until I started kind of putting them through. And I was like, I got to cut some of this stuff. Like nobody needs to know, like, you know, some of this is too much. I'm going to leave a little something to the imagination. But yeah, so I love that book. But you know, there's parts of all of the books that I love. I think I fought for a lot of those books. There was some skepticism of, you know, whether or not people would want to read about a banshee. I had to fight to have banshees front and center on it's banshees, werewolves, and vampires. And at the time, like vampires were huge. And so it was like, well, it should be vampires first. No, everybody's putting vampires first. Let's put banshees first. It hasn't sold that great, you know, but whatever. We got banshees on there. So I'm happy. Love banshees. The probably the top selling, I think the Book of the Bazaar was probably the best selling one, but it was such a different era then. You know, back then I feel like you got like a big buy-in from the brick and mortar stores. And so you would get like, you know, you do a print run and then you'd get orders for 15,000 copies. And then if you went to reprint after that, that was like a huge deal for the size publisher that I was working with and the subject matter. And then I just think like over the years with the Book of the Bazaar came out before, like, I didn't have a cell phone then. Some people did, but like just the way we kind of like started absorbing information, I think started just detracting from books in general.
Yes.
And certain types of books, especially. So like collections and things that were like, you know, that could be used for like research or whatever. So not that, you know, by any means, like there have obviously been like some huge hits during that time in the like more obscure or like freaky topics. But I think just like the way that it's just like publishing is just a very different thing now than it was in 2000. And I guess it was 2008 when I wrote that manuscript, at least, compared to, I was 10 years later, actually, because the Paranormal Parlor came out and I think it was it was not 20. It might have been 2018, or I was writing it in 2018. So it was almost 10 years later, like to the month. Yeah. Because usually my books get pushed to the fall list.
Of course.
So then that means you have to turn them in like, you know, 8 months before that. So I feel like I'm always like, January, February is like my drinking months. I don't. So we're gonna get through this manuscript.
Now I really want to know what one of these stories were that you had to cut. Just one that maybe you wish you didn't have to.
Let's see. Let me think, because I feel like there was a whole chapter. So I know I can just remember very specifically. It wasn't exactly a story about me, but it was also a story about something else. There's a chapter in the Paranormal Parlor book. Oh, whose kitty is that?
I could barely, because I have ears and I'm like, I barely hear him. It's mine. It's the upstairs cat.
It's not you. Well, he wants in.
No, so he's upstairs. He could come down. The door is closed. The dogs aren't here.
Are you also in a basement lair? Is that?
So it's my house was built in 1886,
Ooh.
and I'm on the old side of it, and on this side, so in like, it's a small house, but a whole half of the house was added in the 90s, which is crazy that it's this small, but this just has a spiral staircase, like going to the upstairs. So it's its own little like kind of part of the house and contained.
Wow.
So he's just on this cute giant black cat with long hair sitting on the spiral staircase.
I have a giant black cat with long hair.
Aww.
We are We are twins.
And my room is black. It was the blackest black I could get. You can't tell with the reflective sign,
I did
but
paint
underneath
my bedroom wall black. It's called like black. What was it? Something corn.
Oh.
I can't remember. It's
that
like
makes
this
it better.
something corn black. Yeah, I don't remember. I want to say unicorn black, but that would be weird.
No, tricorn. It's tricorn black.
It's tricorn black.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, this is where my skill lies.
Okay.
Details.
Intense details.
To answer your question, there was a story that got cut. It was cut from Paranormal Parlor, and so there was a whole chapter on dreams and lucid dreaming, and no insult to the editor, but it came in. I mean, the book came in. I think I was 15,000 over, because this format, right? The Book of the Bazaar format, like really, people really like the smallness of it. The like little, you could just read a little bit and move on. And so all of my books are actually that size. Yeah. At least with this publisher, they are. So you can imagine that book actually. Beyond Bazaar is pretty long comparatively, here's, if you just look at the spines, you can see. So this is Paranormal Parlor. It's almost twice as wide, or a third as wide. Oh, yeah. It would have been twice as wide, and they, you just kind of have to uphold your contract. And so the editor just said, "Is there?" She gave me the option. She said, "I'll cut it for you, but." You can also cut it. And I said, well, if you were going to cut it, what would you cut? And she said, I think what I would do is I would pick a section and just cut that entirely. So maybe you can just think about like what section kind of doesn't fit. And we actually sort of talked back and forth and mutually agreed there was this section about dreams and lucid dreaming, which fit, but it fit less than some of the other stuff. So in that section, there's a whole story about like me being really young. I think I was probably like 3 or 4, and having a nightmare, and my mom coming into my bedroom and asking me, what was wrong. And I told her, it was a nightmare, and I fell in this ditch in the middle of a meadow. I still remember the dream really well. And she said, like, my mom was so cool. She's just so cool. She's a witch, and she's just like never, she just instinctively doesn't, she just kind of knew what to do in that situation without scaring me. And so she was like, okay, so just like lay back down. And at the time in my family, we had a Great Dane, and his name was Kind Sir. So she said, just lay back down and have the dream again, and run through that meadow and fall in that ditch. And I'm like, oh, so scary. And she said, you fall in that ditch, and then you look up and you see Sir will come, and he'll drop a rope to you, and he'll pull you out of the hole. And I fell back asleep, and I ran through the meadow, and I fell in this hole, and the dog appeared and dropped a rope and pulled me out of the hole, and I was fine. And we went, whatever, off through the meadow, and that was it, as far as I remembered. And I still kind of get chills when I think about it, because she taught me how to lucid dream.
Yeah.
She taught me that I had control in my dreams when I was so young, that just, it's like when you learn a language, when you're really young, if you grow up speaking more than one language, you don't like, it's harder when you're an adult or even a teenager and you're trying to learn this language. People do it all the time. But if you learn it as like the second nature. And so for me, the language of the plants, the language of magic, the language of the tarot, the language of astrology, that was my second language. And so learning it instinctively at that age made it not like, I remember the first time I read a book about lucid dreaming, I was like, what is lucid dreaming? And then I read it and I was like, oh, I already, like, I mean, you can hone your skills, right? And like, whatever, go skating in the astral plane. But I realized that I actually had been doing that and can do that and still can do that. Just like, learning to count to 10 in another language. It's like instinctive.
Right. As an adult, you're just trying to figure out the semantics and why this would be this way. And as a kid, you're just like, yeah, this is just how it is.
You accept it, and then you also don't like have all the, well, I can't do that, or is this real, or isn't it real? And then, so that was the story that was cut, followed by this really gnarly story about, I think it was Montague Road James. And it was this crazy story about a prophetic dream that this man had watching a Punch and Judy puppet show. It was really creepy. Yeah, but it was pretty long, and then plus with my story in there. So we just chopped the whole chapter. So maybe that'll make it into another. I still have it, of course.
I was like, that's your whole next book.
Yeah.
Lucid dreaming. No, with lucid dreaming, I more so when I was younger, probably now, because my brain is very busy all the time, and I just, no, I do. And one day, it was actually my husband, like, at one point, but he wasn't my husband. He like said, he had a dream that was like, I was like, isn't that how everyone like, that's a dream. And he goes, no, it's not. Why would you? And I was like, no, that's dreaming. Yeah, you just can do all that. And so I had no idea, literally had no idea that was like normal dreams for me. And it's like disappointing when I can't, like when I have now what I would call an normal dream.
Yeah.
It's weird and disappointing. I'm like, that was stupid.
I put myself back to sleep all the time being like, no, girl, you go right back in there and you change the outcome right now.
So no, it's like weird when I wake up and I'm like, oh, so yeah, no, I totally do. And that's normal. So yeah, no, it's fun, like when other people can, and it's normal.
Yeah, and it's fun to think about too. Like, I love thinking about lucid dreams, or just dreams in general, as being like this, like, it's like a little snippet or movie reel. Like, for whatever reason, I've always felt it's like you're actually getting a glimpse into an alternate life that you live. even if it's a
Yeah.
completely ridiculous one, if you think about it, like if you were just dropped into the middle of a different culture, you didn't know the language, you didn't know, you recognized a few things, like this is a house and this is a door, it would take you like a few days to a few months to possibly years to like get kind of, your bearings. But if you're getting dropped into like all these alternate realities all the time, even though you're the center of those realities, you're not there. It kind of makes sense that things don't make sense because you're not used to those yet, because it's not your ordinary life. So I love thinking about that. Like, ooh, are we getting like a little clue? It feels like you're getting a clue to some great mystery.
I love that.
I
A
like
clue
it that
to
way.
a
Really
Yeah.
mystery.
Yeah. So I mean, who knows? There's I'm not a philosopher. Don't really care about philosophy.
Same.
Like I mean, it's fine. It's just like whatever.
It's okay.
It's all right.
Screw it.
Actually, I hate it. It's
We
boring.
don't want
Absolutely.
philosophy to be offended. Be very
Philosophers.
careful.
I'm trying so hard not to swear right now. I want you guys to know that.
I know.
I
Well,
believe that I'm philosophically opposed to you swearing or not swearing, either one.
I know.
But I will say, like, I'm not a big I love reading like those books of like those old books that have like dream interpretations,
Oh,
and I love
yes.
reading about
Yeah.
like people's prophetic dreams and things like that. I'm not a big I guess I'm just not a big Freudian. I shouldn't say I'm not like a philosopher, because I guess I think about things all the time. But I mean, Freud, he was a little bit more of a psychotherapist, I guess, in that way. But he had all these like theories about this means this and this means that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I think totally true for him.
Right.
And a
Yes.
bunch of other people listen to him.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
So yeah.
That's so wild to me that people don't get me wrong, I love seeing and reading and going through all the dream interpretation dictionaries and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Oh, it's
But at the
interesting
same
and fun.
time, oh, so fun.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, no.
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Your subconscious didn't call the editor and was like, hey, you guys, can you put this in the dictionary real quick? Because this is going to be a doozy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's different for everyone.
Right, and so accurate about, something that symbolizes something to me is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Like my language in that way is completely different than somebody else's, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
So,
and an object might have something significant to you,
Correct.
to your personal life or your past or your future, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Although I do think that as far as like symbols go, I think the tarot is an excellent tool for that. Although I do think that there's a really, really wide range of what something can mean within the tarot. And I have a son, he's 12 years old, and he's a hockey player. And I've actually been teaching him the tarot, and I found a deck that I just found a deck that like we could vibe on. And we started using the tarot. Like, I was like, well, what do let's ask a question. And we actually started using it before like hockey games, because it was a reference point for him that he understood and he connected with. And I swear, we'd flip the card over and he could read those cards better than I could. Because he had this pure mind where he was just like, well, I see this person standing in a boat. And so to me, that means like, I'm about to embark on like this, new season. And it's like, that's exactly what that card means, but like, it means something a little bit different to each person. And so we could all look at a boat and, you might have boat trauma. So you see a boat in a card and you're like, boat trauma. Right. But you might think like water is my place of peace. So when I see water in a card, that to me means something like is going to bring me some form of serenity no matter what, or whatever, so there's a lot of room for interpretation. So there's only like a few, as far as like tarot books go, there's only a few that I really trust. And those are the ones that are a little bit more like they're direct, but a little bit ambiguous about, kind of this means this. because I do think there's a lot of room for interpretation there.
Right.
And every time, every reader you get, and also like where the card is and what else it's touching and all that cool stuff. And so I think dreams are similar to that. It's like a jigsaw puzzle in a way, right? Only that it's kind of mapping our mind or our consciousness or something.
I love that.
Oh.
I just want real quick. This is stupid, but I thought you were going to say you found a hockey tarot card.
That's what I was thinking.
I was like, oh no.
He's like, I don't know. I might have to invent that. Yeah, no.
But I love that I love that he's into it. It's just like, yep.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
awesome.
Beautiful deck. I'm trying to. I think it's called the Bohemian Tarot deck, and it's sort of a gorgeous variation on the Rider-Waite, but it's
right.
definitely more like, there's some of the knights are women. Or the knaves are women, so that's really cool. Or female figures.
Yeah.
And I think the magician might be a female figure, which is traditionally portrayed as a man.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, you should look at this deck.
Yeah.
Gonna raise a feminist,
Hell yeah.
magic-y, feminist, witchy hockey player.
I love it.
I love that interpretation that, everything is so subjective to our perspective, right? Like everything that we've experienced and been through, and what means something to somebody means something completely different to somebody else. And the, and I like too, because when we're kids and we sort of, absorb these beliefs or like these talents or like these languages, right? Like the lucid dreaming, for me, it was something, I was always brought up with, there's magic there are fairies in the woods, there are mermaids out there, I was brought up with that stuff, and right. And so it's so much easier for me to have the buy-in of like, oh, okay, whatever, because I don't know, you don't know, so yes, I'm gonna go ahead and believe in that. But that's so easily accessible when we're children, then we kind of get all of this noise from the exterior, and all of these opinions and assumptions sort of put into us. But there are some of those things that just remain with us into adulthood.
Yeah, which is why we must influence the children.
Make them better than we are. We suck.
Just, expose them to a lot of hocus pocus. They'll be all right.
Yeah, totally.
No, but
totally.
that is absolutely, that's absolutely true. And I think when you feel, I think one of the things that happens too, I mean, even if you're exposed to this stuff your whole life, it's natural to explore and look away from it. And therefore, you're going to maybe have some doubt or some skepticism or try different things. Unless you're raised by a witch, and then you just stay a witch the whole time. But no, I mean, it is true though. You kind of, you do get all of that noise. And I remember like I think it was like 1998, I was living in this funky little apartment in San Francisco, and like the Tenderloin, that thing cost $400 a month. I mean, it was unbelievable, riddled with cockroaches and overlooked the garbage cans, and an alley where all the hookers would hang out. But they were very nice to me. I was like, the hookers kept me safe. But do you say hookers anymore? I don't really know.
No, it's sex worker, but it's fine.
Okay, I said hookers the
we're
other
talking
day.
1998. It's okay.
We were talking about a bar the other day, and we were talking about it. So
no, but you don't. But there were sex workers out there, and I just remember. Now I got sidetracked by the sex worker.
Sorry.
No. But I met this amazing man who was. Let me just describe him for you. He was 6'2". He had long, sort of prematurely graying, flowing hair past his shoulders. He was a member of the OTO, so he was a practicing Themalite, and his name was Jack, and he was from New Orleans, and he was a psychic. He was a reader at this place called the Psychic Eye, which was like this big like magic shop chain. We had one in San Francisco, there was one in Vegas, there was one They were like all over the country, and he was a psychic there, and he said, if you want to really like improve your psychic abilities, just go 1 week, don't read the news, don't watch television. Back then we didn't have cell phones. So he said, you can answer your phone, but just let your phone go to answering machine. That's what we had back then.
Cassette,
like, just kind of cut the noise. Like, you can go about your daily life, you can do the things you need to do, but if you're trying to like just stay in touch with what your instincts are, you have to actually, in order to get in touch with your instincts, you have to shut out some of those outside influences. And when you do that, it's kind of like a meditative reset. You'll find again and again that the person you're thinking of is thinking of you and contacts you. I think now, and I certainly, being like of that generation that really like grew up typing on a typewriter, but like also started using computers, and now sees the incredible benefit, because look at us, we're in a magical room that doesn't really exist, and we're all hanging out, and it's like, so there's obviously benefit to it, but there's also a lot more just like, you're kind of constantly looking at things, and there's a lot of pressure, especially as a creative person, to maintain some kind of following and get interest in things. And that can all be quite exhausting. But you still can, I mean, even a day of reset, I just to like kind of put yourself back on track. And I just find when I don't know what to do, honestly, like that idea of doing nothing, but like really kind of like shutting everything down and just pulling a couple tarot cards and just having conversations with people, but trying not to like look at the news, trying not to let any email. Oh, it's the bane of my existence. Email.
Just stop looking at it. It'll
Evil
disappear
mail.
eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
That's fine.
They'll just stop contacting you.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That sounds divine and so stressful. I can't imagine not looking at my phone every 5 minutes.
Oh
and
my God,
yet
I do it all the time.
it's not conscious.
Oh, I do it all the time. It's delightful. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, there's a couple of things there. First of all, I was annoying everyone all weekend. We were at a paranormal conference.
Ooh, what one?
Great Lakes Paranormal Conference.
Oh, I want to
So
go to
fun.
that.
You got to go
next
next year. It's
year.
amazing.
Okay.
It's
Next
so
year.
fun.
So I was annoying everyone with asking, like, okay, because I think that we put these blockers with technology, in our way, and like we're missing some sort of brain connectivity where we could all be a little bit more psychic and intuitive if we just kind of put that stuff away. Anyway, but
And everyone was like, "Shut up, Jenny!
Shut up.
I'm checking my
I
email."
don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, but we got to post this on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's my job.
Yeah,
that's
Kara's
Kara.
phenomenal at it, and I'm terrible at it, because I found a while ago, like, as somebody who creates like tangible sorts of things, I get too involved in the phone, and then that sort of ebbs, right? Like I can't make things as well.
Like it's harder to tap into that like creative
Yes.
thing if you're distracted, and like absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
it's so difficult to do, and I've got to put the phone down and like breathe through it, and then go take a walk outside and find like a forest preserve or something, and just not.
So when I sell my next book, I'm buying myself this thing. I've already decided.
Ooh.
Pre-ordered. It's like the modern day typewriter. It's this product that's called, I should get an endorsement deal. It's called Free Write. And it's basically like, it looks like a small portable typewriter, but it solves I can type on a typewriter. That's great. It's a fun thing to do. But if I've got a deadline, or I've got to turn something in, or I've got to turn something into something else, then I have to retype that whole thing. Or what am I going to do? Scan it, turn it into a PDF, convert it to a Word. It's just like, by that time, I might as well have just typed it on the computer. So what this thing is, like a smart typewriter. So you type and it's distraction free. It's kind of distraction free writing, but it does have a Bluetooth component that you can basically like, whatever, send it through the cloud to your computer, and it converts it into a document that you can then work on. And there's a small little screen. It's like a tiny little word processor.
I was gonna say, is it like the word processors that were
And it's
so
portable,
cool in modern
yeah.
ones,
Yes,
but they're not
yeah,
anymore?
exactly. You can actually lift this one.
Yeah, it was a big two-hander. There was a handle. You were
Yeah.
Case and everything.
But anyway, so I think that because I think the other thing about the creative process, and I think with writing, there's a big challenge, or any kind of like online creation, because you are like basically it's so tempting to just open a tab and look at Facebook, or open a tab, so it's
Just
like
for a
it's
second.
constantly.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, actually, I want to look that up. And one thing I found myself, and I've as my son is getting older and he's doing like longer writing projects, and I tell him, like, one of my tricks is like, it's not like this like revolutionary concept or anything, but if you don't know something and you want to look it up, you just highlight it and move on, so you can stay with that flow, so you can stay with the generative part of writing.
Oh.
And then you can go back and you can add the research later. Like, I'll even put in things like year that this actually happened in big brackets with the highlight, and then move on, because if I get caught up trying to look up what that is, then I'm like, oh, look at this rabbit hole of medieval history.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
I need to do this for like 5 hours. Bye.
This is relevant.
Maybe someday
Also,
I gotta do it.
This. Yeah. So, and that's fine to do. Like, it's fun sometimes to get lost in that rabbit hole. But when you're trying to not interrupt that generative flow, I mean, it is hard to get 20 minutes of like flow. We're working women. We've got distractions galore. The other thing that really helped me is I took a writing class from this amazing woman, and she said, Marcy Rendon, and she's a novelist, and she writes these indigenous crime novels that are just phenomenal. Wow. And I took a class from her, and she had us do all these writing prompts, and then she had us like stop. And then she was not like, a lot of times, like, people will be like, oh, finish your thought, where she's like, you can stop now, put your pens down. And what she said is that in real life, when you're writing and you have something like really creative going, you're going to get interrupted. Your kids are going to ask you for something. Your family's going to ask you for something. Someone's going to ring the doorbell. You're going to need to go somewhere. And so all of those distractions, she said she never actually gets writer's block because she never actually has enough time to get the stuff done. And it's actually really, really been helpful for me, because instead of like saying, okay, I have to set aside this like grand amount of time, if I've got a thought, I'm just going to go with it. And when that thought is actually interrupted by something I care about, it stays with me, and I think about it again and again and again. I'm like, I got to go finish that sentence. So I thought that was a really helpful, very practical tool for any creative person, to be able to, instead of like, ideally we're isolated and we have all this time to pace the room and, smoke cigarettes and drink too much coffee and put off writing. But if we're, but like, or art, creating the art or whatever it is that we need to get done, to actually have like that kind of, that like, just accept the distractions are going to come, and just say to yourself, I'm going to put a bookmark in that, and I'm going to come back to that as soon as I can. And if you have to write in fits and starts, that's okay. And that was very revolutionary for me to learn that. I learned that last year. I was like, wow, this is life-changing.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the things that like I've, over the past like few years, I'd say probably like 7 years, I don't know. One of the things that I've learned is the creativity and fear process, and that those two things sort of walk hand in hand most of the time. Have you read Big Magic?
Yeah, I have Big Magic. Yes,
it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so that book, honestly, has saved my butt in so many different areas, not just creative.
That's a book you can just read a random section, and I love it too. Like, the font is really big and it's really airy.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like really not intimidating when you get into it. You're just like, yeah, this is great. Oh yeah, I have time to read this. But yeah, just that creative process. And I think the key is having a space or having it in front of you in a way that you can continue to do it. So for me, that's like a writing room where like my stuff's just always there and I can just bop in and do it. But sometimes I write at the counter or the kitchen table, or like, I write outside as much as possible because I live in Minnesota. So it's only possible from like, June to early October. And then you're kind of like, yeah, no. Yeah. But I think that, there's a real magic in that creative process. And just I'll loop this back into fairies. So I know that the recurring theme with fairies is this absence of time, like this misplaced time, right? Like you go into the fairy kingdom and things take longer than they think. You've been gone, or everything seems to happen like overnight, and then you leave and it's been 7 years, or so the like just it messes with your sense of time. And we have this and I mean like the royal we, right? Like we have this sense in the modern Western world in particular of time being like beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, and very linear. And we sort of overlook the constant kind of loop of time. And I think that's to our detriment. But I think that this goes with the creative process. This goes with storytelling. This goes with fairy tales and mythology. That in this time, if I'm telling you a story and I'm telling you about this little troll that kind of lives on the edge of the swamp, and the children like to play, you're kind of like, you get lost in the swamp and you're thinking like, could this be? But regardless, you're listening to the story, you're reading the story, you're lost in that story, and you have actually lost track of time, like losing track of time. To me, that's fairy time. Nice. Losing track of the modern idea of time is fairy time. And so I think that with fairy tales or storytelling of any kind, or entering that world of the fairy, it is kind of that suspension of disbelief. It's what happens when we have paranormal encounters, but they're so brief. It's such a glitch. And then when we retell the story, it's like it took an hour and a half for that to happen. But really, it's just like 30 seconds. And the whole time you're trying to convince yourself it's not happening. Yeah. Right? Like but the sense of time is like stretched out and messed up. And it's not because you're trying to exaggerate. It is because you're trying to process, but it's also because there was a glitch in like how you thought things were going to go. And so I think that actually has this incredible like magic and power. And so to me, that is evidence of the fairy realm and of this magical realm, is that we do it every day. Children do it easier than we do, but we do it every day. Honestly, we do it with our phones. You space out, you're watching someone's funny Instagram reels as they're like making jokes about how they say words in Scotland. Guilty. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, we got to get to school. I'm going to be late. So I think but even that, like there's this, that rabbit hole in itself is the closest we can come to actually putting a definition on what fairy time is. There's a more sacred, I think there's kind of like a more sacred version where you would like willingly go into it and appreciate it. But usually when fairies come upon people, it's not a willing situation. They've made a mistake. They've gone down the road they shouldn't have gone down. They stayed out too late at the pub. They wronged the wrong person. They whistled past the graveyard. And now all of a sudden you got to carry a corpse to the other side of County Kerry.
Again.
Yet again.
Sometimes things happen. It's just what you got to do.
You have no choice.
Oh, I love that comparison. That's amazing. Oh man, I've just been getting so many cool nuggets of stuff lately. But yeah, that lost time is fairy time. Amazing.
Yeah, and I think we feel like we maybe feel bad about it sometimes. I know I do. I'm like, oh God, this is based out. But I really, I think it's. I mean, I listen to podcasts and I just like go for walks and get lost in the thoughts. And It really is. It puts us in this other point, like other like headspace. And to be honest with you, we have to have that headspace, because honestly, if we can't break down our mindset enough to believe in mermaids, almost swore there. If we can't break down our mindset to believe in mermaids, how are we going to figure out like how to cure cancer?
Right.
Like we have to think outside the box. And so we
Right.
have to accept some things are out of our control and out of our knowledge
Understanding?
base. Yeah, and our understanding, right? Because that's the mindset of entrepreneurs. That's the mindset of change makers.
Yeah.
So mermaids for the win.
Mermaids for the win, always.
I agree.
But you're right. Like that little bit of time, I used to feel very badly about it, right? And I've been through a couple of things in my life where I felt like, oh, I wasted so much time doing this, or I didn't do this. But none of that is accurate, because there are lessons and there are teachings that occur in moments that I'm not even aware of until later. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And so you are where you're supposed to be at any given point in time. You know, like that is the place that you're supposed to be. That is the thing that you're supposed to, of course, barring like murder or whatever. But that is the thing.
I don't know. I mean,
Don't
That's
judge.
what you're supposed to be. And then someone has to carry the corpse.
Someone
I
will carry
was-
corpse.
I was going to get
Road.
far less philosophical. I just have a pond in my backyard that I'm pretty sure the fairies are all over, and
I'm
I
1000%
just
sure.
literally like there are some days like when it's not too hot, like when there's not enough things to like distract you, that I will literally just go out there and just like be there the whole day, and I will be like, oh, that was literally the whole
Okay,
day. I
but
don't even know
can
if
I
I ate
give
or
you-
drank water.
Can I give you one piece of advice?
Yes.
Don't fall asleep on the fairy
Yeah.
mound.
Rip
Do
Van Winkle,
not
buddy.
Fall
Don't.
asleep on the fairy mound. And if you do, don't
It's
eat or
not a
drink
comfortable
anything
place
when
to
you
fall
get
asleep.
there.
Oh,
There's no comfortable place to fall
I mean-
asleep, so I will not.
Just
I
don't
know
do
it.
it.
Like
Just
I'm
don't.
so my friend Bucky has this expression of like being a hot stove toucher. Like it's kind of like an addict's expression where it's like, that stove is hot. Ooh, let me see. You know. And so when my mom would say, "Don't fall asleep on the fairy mound," she would say it in this way where like I knew I shouldn't do it. But there's always been this part of me. It's the part of me that's in love with the villain. It's the part of me that wants to run off into the sunset with Freddy Krueger. You know, like that part of me is like, but what would happen if I did? Like,
how much worse could it
sup,
be?
upon the
Hello.
fairy feast? You know, like how bad can it get?
Maybe I will drink that drink that was offered at the Fairies.
Hello.
We'll
little
cut that
circle.
concoction. Yeah.
You guys, we are well past an hour,
We
and
are.
it feels like it hasn't been even close to
No.
at all.
That was its own fairy time.
Oh,
Really was.
yeah.
I
we
hope
lost
that-
You
time.
know what?
And I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface
Not
of the
even.
top of the iceberg, and I'm sad about that. So you have to come back and talk
I
to
would.
us some
Oh,
more.
you
Yes.
are all so wonderful. I would
I
love
love
to come
you.
back. It was such a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
I
I love
just
you
do.
too. I love you too. Okay, let's
Thank
all look
you.
into each other's eyes. So we have to look at look at the camera, right? Are
So,
we all?
and I'm obsessed with this, like, just like fabricated
I love
room
you.
theory,
Yeah.
and like, and just this place that doesn't exist
Oh,
that we
look at
all
this
are.
beautiful magical group. Like basically,
Enchanting.
we're time traveling right now, right? We're like,
Yay.
I don't know. Are we all in the same time zone? We're not all in the same state.
No,
We might all. Are we all in the
Three
same
of us
time
are.
zone? Central.
Central.
Yeah.
Where are you?
We're all
We're
central.
central.
We're all
We're all
central.
We're all
is
here
where
right now.
See,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
all
this is
meant
like,
to be.
The center. You got to come to the center.
Well, for everyone else who just watched all of this madness, we will see you next week, and I hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, see you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.